program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
All right, we'll call the meeting to order. For tonight's proceedings, the procedures that we'll be following, I will briefly explain what is being requested. City staff will present the name of the applicant, what the site request is located, and surrounding land use and zoning. The Plan Commission will ask the staff's analysis and recommendation. The applicant will be asked to come forward to describe the request and present his or her case and answer any questions the Planning Commission may have regarding the application. Applicants should include at least the following information in their presentation to the Plan Commission: important details about the request, why the request is being made, and why the request should be approved. I'll call for comments from the audience. Please only come forward during that time period. The Planning Commission will hold discussion and then vote on the matter. And in order to pass, 5 commission members must vote for the proposal. As a courtesy, would everybody please either turn off their cell phones or turn them to silent, please? All right, so the first item on our agenda for tonight is for a recommendation and annexation at Interstate 94 and Highway 93.
This is the property at I-94 and Highway 93. It is 54.15 acres of land. It is vacant with an active mining permit. The parcel is within the sewer service area of the City of Eau Claire. City sewer and water is available at Lorch, although we will need to extend high-pressure water main to properly service the property. This request is consistent with the comprehensive plan, and we have recommended approval.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you. What kind of mining is going on there?
It's a sand and clay type mining that's going on there, non-metallic type mining. It's been going on for as long as I can remember. It originally was clay material they're getting out of there. Now there's some sand material that's been going out of there.
Commissioner Klinkhammer.
I believe that what they're taking out there was used as fill for other developments and other building projects.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward? Would the applicant like to come forward? Not to put you on the spot, sorry.
Apologize.
We're talking about the annexation.
Yeah, of course. I didn't hear the presentation, but if you've got any questions, I didn't hear the presentation, but I'd be more than happy to answer any questions you've got.
Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't see any at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
As this is a public hearing, would anyone like to come forward to make comments? I'll ask 3 times. This is the second. Anyone who wants to make comments? Anyone looking to make comments? If I see none, then we'll close the public hearing portion of it, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is an annexation on LaSalle Street to annex a property with an existing home in the town of Seymour.
This is the property located on the north side of LaSalle Street at McKinley Road. It's 4.51 acres of land. There is an existing single-family home on the property. The parcel is within the sewer service area of the City of Eau Claire. Sanitary sewer and water are available along LaSalle Street. This request is also consistent with a comprehensive plan, and we have recommended approval.
Are there any questions for Daryl? I'll ask one if no one else does. Do you know how many lots that can be divided into?
We do not have a formal application at this time. A preliminary application we've seen has consolidated with a large piece of land to the north
Okay,
and has about 70 lots on it
okay,
for single-family homes.
okay, thank you. Any other questions for Daryl? I think that's it.
Okay?
Is the applicant here? And one piece of housekeeping before I forget, there's a yellow piece of paper at the back of the room on the counter. When you want to come forward and speak, please fill that out and hand that to Ryan in the red shirt at the front.
Okay, will do. My name's Cody Philipsak, C&M Properties. I'm here with Adam Ashley with Ashley Construction, and we're purchasing the property and then the property to the north and looking at doing a residential development. We'll be coming forward in the next month or two, but there is a large shortage of city lots, and we're lucky enough to pick up this parcel that it's just beautiful land. All residential lots, no multifamily or anything, and nice varying size lots and a lot of different price points on the housing and stuff. I think it'll be a very nice, it's surrounded by, obviously Princeton Valley and a lot of other nice areas there, so I guess that's it.
Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't see any, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to make commentary? Is there anyone from the public who'd like to voice an opinion? Third time, would anyone like to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll look for a motion. Commissioner Peterson.
I'll make a motion for approval of the annexation.
We have-
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? We'll call the question then. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is a capital improvement plan citywide to declare the 2018 to 2022 capital improvement plan consistent with the Eau Claire Comprehensive Plan.
Thank you, Commissioner Ebert. Jay Winzenz, I'm the Finance Director for the City of Eau Claire. And before you this evening is the 2018 through 2022 Capital Improvements Plan for the City of Eau Claire. This is our annual update to the CIP, and we will be looking for any questions or any feedback from the Plan Commission, and then after you've had an opportunity to do so, we would ask that the Plan Commission find that the Capital Improvements Plan is consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommend approval of the comprehensive plan to the City Council. I just wanted to highlight a few projects within the Capital Improvements Plan that may be of interest to members of the Plan Commission. First of all, within the water utility, there is a project that is included to add an additional crossing of the Chippewa River for our water service. The west or northwest side of the community is currently served with a single 30-inch water main crossing the Chippewa River, and we have had breaks of that main in the past, not many, but it has occurred. Adding a second river crossing would increase the redundancy of the water distribution system and enhance the northwestern section of the community for additional development and industrial development. Within the parking fund, we have funding included in really all 5 years of the CIP for wayfinding signage for parking. This is to help residents and visitors to our community find their way to not only the new parking ramp, but the old parking ramp and the other parking lots within the downtown as Eau Claire continues to become a destination for people in northwestern Wisconsin and throughout the Midwest. It becomes increasingly important to help those folks find their way to parking within the downtown. We have a project within the transit fund to fund a transfer center building. This project was originally anticipated to be proceeding in 2017 and 2018, has been pushed back 1 year to 2019 because we continue to revise our development proposals for a transit center. So we do have about $6.25 million included in 2019 to construct a new transit transfer center to replace the facility that was constructed in 1984 as a temporary facility. 23 years later. So within the transportation fund, we've got various transportation-related projects scheduled. In 2019, State Street is scheduled for reconstruction. This will be from Garfield Avenue up over the hill to Lexington Avenue, replacing the retaining wall also that is disintegrating where it goes under Claremont. So that section of State Street is scheduled for reconstruction. In 2020 and 2021, we're looking at the Galloway Street Railroad overpass. Galloway Street is becoming a major entrance into the downtown area, a major way for people to get from Highway 53 into the downtown. And the railroad at-grade railroad crossing can present an obstacle to folks getting into the downtown. In addition, it impedes emergency medical service from the central fire station to the northeast part of our community. That project is anticipating significant funding from both the railroad as well as the federal government to proceed with that. Related to that is Putnam Street Railroad Quiet Zone. This is also scheduled for 2020. With the completion of the overpass at Galloway and improvements to the Putnam Street intersection, these will be the last two remaining intersections within the downtown area where trains need to sound their whistles and create a nuisance to the community. Turning our attention to the Land, Building, and Equipment Fund, we continue to make improvements to this building that we're in right now. We have, I guess, recommitted to maintaining city offices within this building for the foreseeable future, and have embarked on a multi-year effort to modernize this facility. This year we'll be taking care of the envelope of the building, if you will, by replacing the roof, tuck pointing the building, and hopefully getting the windows replaced. I don't know if any of you have walked around the building during a rainstorm, but we have various buckets located throughout both the third floor of the building as well as, surprisingly, the second floor of the building. In the engineering department, water has leaked all the way into the second floor of the building, and they have buckets out as well. So we want to get the envelope of the building sealed up this year, and then in subsequent years we'll be proceeding with office remodeling, starting with the south wing of the building, with the community development area, with the engineering area, the city manager's office, city attorney's office, and then doing additional remodeling to the north wing of the building, and finally to the connector or the center that connects the buildings together, and also the council chambers. So a lot of improvements and modernizations planned occurring over the next 3 to 4 years. Also included within this CIP is additional funding for the construction and replacement of Fire Station Number 10. There's an additional $500,000 included in 2018 for that project. We have acquired a site at this point. We are in the process of developing plans for the construction of the fire station. Final site plan will, when that's ready, will be coming back before this body for your approval, and then we'll be proceeding with the development of final construction specifications and bidding documents, hoping to bid that project yet this year so that a contractor can start construction hopefully yet this fall and get much of the concrete work done before the snow flies. Also within the transportation area, we're continuing with our alley improvement program. We've got $250,000 planned in each year of the capital improvement program to upgrade the quality of the alleys within Eau Claire. For a number of years, alleys were somewhat neglected within the community and had fallen into a state of disrepair. In some cases had literally turned to rubble. We are in the process of resurfacing and reconstructing those alleys to bring them up to a condition similar to what you would expect with the street network within our community. But that is a multi-year effort to undertake the alley resurfacing program. Within the Parks and Recreation area, planned is a Southwest Dog Park and Boat Launch. That's down next to the wastewater treatment facility. That is planned for planning in 2018 and construction in 2019. Also included in the CIP is a master planning effort for Mount Simon Park. That's scheduled for 2019. Development of a Northwest Community Park is contemplated as part of this CIP. Funding is included in 2020 for that particular project. That would be up in the area on the northwest side off of Jeffers Road. Within the downtown area, several projects are included in this CIP. 2018 sees the construction or the completion of the construction of Haymarket Plaza. That's intended to coincide with the opening of the Confluence Arts facility. There'll be some work done at that location in 2017, some retaining walls and other things that can be done and won't be disturbed as part of the construction staging, but then we're going to complete the construction of the plaza in 2018. Also planned is $1.5 million for the construction of a pedestrian bridge across the Eau Claire River connecting Phoenix Park to the Haymarket Plaza. Also included within Tax Incremental District Number 11 are improvements to the Library Plaza. We continue to have discussions with U.S. Bank concerning our interest in acquiring their drive-up facility and relocating them to another facility within the downtown area, and then incorporating that area into a plaza connecting the municipal building with the library. Third to last, we have included for 2018, again to coincide with the opening of the Confluence Arts Center, is a completion of the downtown Riverwalk. This would extend the Riverwalk along the Chippewa River from Haymarket Plaza down to Grand Avenue. So again, that's included for 2018 to complete that section, improve that section of the downtown Riverwalk. And shifting to the other side of the river within the Cannery Park redevelopment area, included for 2018 is funding to complete the property acquisitions within the Cannery redevelopment area. We'd like to get those acquisitions created so that we can continue to move forward with planning efforts in that particular area. And then lastly, within that same area is the development of the Cannery District Park. This is included in 2021, and we've got $3.8 million included in the CIP for the development of that park. There has been some preliminary plans prepared for that park that includes soccer fields, ball fields, riverfront trail. The trail is expected to be completed this year, but numerous amenities within that linear park along the river. So I would be happy to answer questions about any of the projects that I spoke about or any other projects within the CIP, and staff is recommending that the Plan Commission find the CIP consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommend approval to the City Council.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Larson?
Thank you. I don't think these questions will affect my vote. I do think it's consistent with our comprehensive plan, but on the Gibson Street ramp, do you know how long it will extend the life of that ramp before it's going to need to be replaced?
Our expectation is that it will get about 10 years out of the ramp, but we are starting to plan for the replacement of that facility.
Okay. And then the other question is, I'm not sure if it's been amended since this was printed or whatever, but the transit center in the CIP copy that we have shows $6.25 million in 2018.
That has been amended since
okay.
since the preliminary plan was or the proposed plan was printed. After discussions with the City Council, staff had recommended that we push it back a year because of some additional planning efforts that are going on. So that has been pushed back 1 year.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Jay? I have a couple about the
Absolutely.
alleyways. How does the city choose which alleys to be done? Are they doing it by district? Are they doing it by condition, or?
Good question. We are doing it by condition.
Okay,
So similar to how we choose streets for resurfacing, we use a pavement condition index, and we're using that same pavement condition index to do the alleys. Now, many of them are in very poor condition, so we are trying to group them together to some extent by area, because there are some economies of scale if you can do an area and the contractor doesn't have to mobilize and remobilize all the way across town. So we are trying to take advantage of some of those economies of scale as well.
okay. And the other question I had about alleys, are the property owners assessed for those improvements then as they're done?
Yes, the property owners are assessed for those improvements.
Okay.
We do have an alley reimbursement program for lower moderate income
Okay.
property owners, so that if they meet the lower moderate income standards based upon their family size, the Community Development Block Grant Fund will pay the assessment for that property owner, but it's
Okay.
only for lower moderate income property owners.
So do they apply through the Housing Authority for that, or how do they find out about that?
They actually apply to Christine right back here in the back row.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you. Are there any other questions? I don't
Thank you.
see any. So we would be looking for a motion. Do we need to make this public hearing? Yes? Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to make any comments about the the capital improvement plan? Are there any comments? Are there any comments? I see none, so I will close the public hearing.
I move that we find the capital improvement plan consistent with the comprehensive plan and recommend approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I don't see any. We'll call the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. So the next item on the agenda is to excess land, to declare vacant land as excess land. Hello.
I am looking for recommendation for the city council to declare this parcel of land excess. In the packet, it's listed as West MacArthur, but it should be West Hamilton, Hamilton Avenue and 37. The parcel was purchased in 1946. It has a total of 152,460 square feet, and the DOT is requesting to purchase 4,517 of that parcel for a vision triangle. They're looking at purchasing the red square there for safety concerns. But I'm looking at declaring the entire parcel as excess land. The remaining section would be used for future development. It is currently zoned as industrial, but the comprehensive plan has it listed for commercial development. In the event we did have somebody, we would need approval from council for the development, but I'm looking for approval for excess land.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Mitchell?
This must be outside of the Sky Park boundary.
It is, yes, yep, just outside of it.
Are there any other questions? I don't see any, thank you. This is a public hearing, so if there are any comments that would be appropriate to hear them at this time. Are there any comments? Are there any comments? Quiet audience tonight. So I'll close the public hearing then, and I'd be looking for a motion.
Also move to make it excess land and sell it to the state.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And we have a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next item on the agenda is for approval, certified survey map for the local lounge.
This is the local lounge property off of North Claremont Avenue, just north of Vine. And this is the certified survey map that would take and split the property into 2 lots, with the northern lot having access via a easement. And also we placed in your packet the site plan that was approved by the Plan Commission and shows the new building that is just being completed on the north portion of the property, and then the existing building and its parking on the remainder parts of the property. This CSM creates 2 lots with the accessory building, which is under construction, on a separate lot. And the purpose, as we understand it, is for financing of that building. Lot 2 is proposed to have access via the 30-foot wide access easement, which is the driveway to the site. The Plan Commission previously approved the site plan for this project, which determined that this access was adequate. The CSM will also need to provide a cross-parking agreement for this situation and easements for utilities and drainage as needed. We've recommended approval with conditions, providing the cross-parking, utility, and drainage easements, and city's surveyor review of those. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Darrell? Commissioner Peterson?
Maybe this is for the applicant, but does this affect their additional parking on the east side of North Claremont Avenue?
That's why we want that cross-parking easement in place, so that it applies to both properties, the parking across. It doesn't affect it, it's just it needs to apply to 2 properties now instead of just 1 property.
Okay.
Commissioner Klinkhammer?
Thank you. It seems to me that when the accessory building was approved at the council, that we expanded their liquor license for that. Does having another lot change or impact that at all?
That's a good question. I can ask the licensing people if that's something that has to also be addressed as part of this.
Do you recall it being, I thought it was part of their license that we had that expansion.
I will ask those folks, or at least make them aware of this situation.
Are there any other questions for Darrell? I don't see any right now. Thank you. Would the applicant like to come forward? please make sure at some point you fill out the yellow slip of paper and hand it to Ryan that has your contact information.
I'm Jim Scheffler, I'm the land surveyor. Do you guys have any questions?
Are there any questions? I have one. The original site plan lined up pretty parallel with the lot lines that were kind of denoted, not the survey, but the original site plan, and now the building has kind of changed its orientation. Am I making that up, or is the building turned slightly?
Well, you know what, I'm looking at it visually. I wasn't involved with the site plan process. I guess I came in after the building had been started, but I don't believe they had the building staked out by a surveyor.
Okay.
I know when I measured the building, it met setbacks.
Okay.
If that matters, but.
And that was my real question, is if,
Yeah.
by moving it slightly, if it just still met the setback requirements.
Yeah, currently it does.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the surveyor? I don't see any. Thank you. This is a public hearing, and we will open it to the public at this time. Is there anyone who'd like to make any commentary? Is there anyone who'd like to come forward? Is there anyone who'd like to speak? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll move approval.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
We have a second. Any discussion? I don't see any. Then I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Next item on the agenda is driveway surface waiver for 2820 Mondovi Road, driveway surface waiver for a mini storage.
This is the property located on Mondovi Road, which is northwest of Highway 37. I would note the mini storage facilities next to it. This is the site plan that was approved by the Plan Commission, and this is the building that's been built. And it shows then a paved driveway for the building. And this is then a picture of what was built, and that's the building, and this is a crushed rock that was built for the property. We attached the city's notice of violation letter to applicant in your packet. And we also attach applicant's memorandum requesting a permanent waiver of the paving requirements for this property. Again, the mini storage facility has been completed, and the one remaining violation on this property is that the driveways for this facility were not paved, and they have been covered with a blue granite or crushed rock. Applicant is requesting a permanent waiver in paving requirements. We place in your report the provisions of code for your review of this situation. The permanent waiver application request is for a driveway area next to the mini storage facility, not a parking lot, which is what the provisions in city code talk about. Parking lot paving requirements that have been permanently waived by past plan commissions may have included a driveway area to a parking lot, but we are not aware of such a waiver being allowed for just a driveway. And again, there are 3 other mini warehouse facilities on Mondovi Road near or next to this, and all of them have paved driveways. We are not aware of other mini storage facilities in the city that do not have paved driveways. Most properties on Mondovi Road have paved parking lots. There is a hotel south of here that has part of its overflow parking lot in gravel, but its main parking lot is paved. And the technical college does have a truck repair center off of Mondovi Road, west of this site, that does have a graveled parking area. The Plan Commission will need to find compliance with the provisions in city code in the report to grant this permanent waiver. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions? Commissioner Grantland?
The site plan as
as originally submitted, seems to have a fairly detailed approach to the drainage and filtration. Is it likely that this gravel base can contribute to that particular pattern of filtration and concentration? And the ones adjacent all have that, the detail that's provided here, which has the concrete center gutter essentially, and all asphalt draining to a center line that then exits both ends. Has this got any chance of contributing drainage in the same way?
I guess the way to answer that is what's important to us is that they've got a infiltration cell in the back and another one in the front, and that the water gets there. Usually when you see a concrete gutter like that, it's because the grades are fairly flat and they don't think they can make the gravel or the asphalt grade that way. Now in this case, whether it's asphalt or rock or concrete, we as the city don't particularly care how quickly the water gets there, just that it gets there. And if it's too flat, they'll have bird baths and conceivably frost boils in the spring too, but that would be a self-inflicted problem on themselves. It wouldn't have any impact on the neighboring properties unless it were to fill up and spill off to the side. The bigger problem is with that kind of a flat grade and the rock can ravel around a little bit and you can change the grading and the drainage patterns. And so there would have to be extra vigilance to make sure that the rock was maintained in a way that actually drained in those directions and ruts didn't take the water off in the wrong way. So I kind of talked around. I don't know if I directly answered your question or if that's what you were getting at with your question.
It seems like it's as likely to get the water there as not.
Commissioner Peterson.
I went out there 2 times today, and my second reason was for that very point. And the blue rock is V-shaped towards the middle. Now with snow plowing in the winter, I don't think that's going to stand up over the years. I think it's going to start flattening out, and I think all the drainage is going to go off the north property into the property north of them. So I think with either asphalt or concrete, that's not going to happen, be it a much harder surface. And I don't know how permeable this is. The blue granite isn't on the top, but if you kick under it, there's clay and silts underneath, so it may be only permeable for the top quarter, half inch. And then it's basically a clay or silt, and in the wintertime it's going to be impermeable.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, we do treat gravel as an impervious surface because if they've compacted it to the point that will handle the traffic loads, it's not going to infiltrate much water. It's only the surface wetting on that top gravel. And so there won't be any infiltration off that rock.
Commissioner Klinkhammer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to confirm, when the site plan was originally approved, it was approved with a paved driveway, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Regarding their question about allowing them a year to complete it, to have this paved, is that within our purview to allow that time, or what is the normal time frame that they would have to comply if we insisted upon it?
We had given them till June 1st. They instead sent in this letter requesting a permanent waiver. The commission has the authority to do temporary waivers. The commission can give an indication when you'd like to see it done if you so choose. We want this, if it's going to be paved, to be done this year and not wait until next year for it to be done. So
if we denied the waiver and insisted on the paving, we could specify a date that it be completed by.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Is there a parking lot on this property, or do people just park on this driveway?
they just back into the units or next to the units and park on the driveway.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? Commissioner Peterson.
Is there any outside storage allowed on this property?
It was not approved by Plan Commission.
Because the van in the picture is in the same place it was. It's there today, the same place it was when the picture was taken earlier this year.
Vehicle parking is not normally considered outdoor storage, just so you know.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? I think we're done.
Okay.
Would the applicant like to come forward? Make sure you fill out the yellow slip of paper and hand it to Ryan with your personal information on it. The yellow pieces are way at the back of the room.
Oh, all right.
You can do it afterwards.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself and
Yeah,
list your
hi.
address.
Mark Collish, home address is 1441 Harding Avenue.
You're upside down, but otherwise good.
There you go. Yeah, I guess that's the same picture you all have in your packets. Just by way of a little background on myself, I've had a long history in Eau Claire of trying to make Eau Claire a better place to work and live. So having to be here under these circumstances is really very disappointed in myself for not addressing this before. So I'm sorry for that, but I guess here we are. I ran the Chippewa Valley Innovation Center for 5 years. I was on the founding members of the Friends of the Chippewa River Trail in 1989. I published the first arts and entertainment guide in Eau Claire. So like I said, I've got a long history of really trying to make this place a better place. And what I've done there, I thought I had really done something that made the neighborhood better. There's a lot of reasons why I chose that over Blacktop, which I'll get into. But again, I've got over 35 years of managing commercial and residential rental properties around the city of Eau Claire. I'm just now starting another company. It's called World's Best Products. Some of you may know that I ran the Envirotech for 25 years, metal fabrication and powder coating business near the airport. When I sold that building and business in the last 2 years, I bought this property on Mondovi Road with the intention of course, putting up these storage units and then eventually putting up on the other side of the house that's on that property that I bought a distribution center for my World's Best Products. It's an internet-based manufacturing business. Envirotech's still doing my manufacturing, several products that we offer. And you can look at those on our website if you'd like to see what we're trying to do there. What we've got, I can't agree with everything that I heard here tonight, I guess. I've done quite a bit of research, did a lot of homework on what we've got. Here's what was done. This blue granite is something that should not be confused with crushed limestone or decomposed granite or recycled blacktop. A lot of those things I would not use because they're messy, they're dusty, they erode. What I have here is, you can see that we graded it with V in the middle. We put down 4 inches minimum of this, which is called blue granite ballast, otherwise known as railroad ballast, which is what they put under railroad tracks. And they've been doing that for 100 years for a reason. It's because it drains well, it's not dusty, and it doesn't erode. And then on top of that, we put this little 3/4 inch blue granite. So when they went over and compacted it down, it makes a really nice smooth surface, but it drains exceptionally well. I guess it's hard to tell in this picture, but as I noted in my response, that picture was taken about a half hour after we had gotten 1.5 inches of rain the night before. And you can see there's spots where it's already dry on my driveway, and I guess I took some pictures that were originally included that didn't get included in your packet of neighboring properties where there were puddles. So I'm not getting any of that. What's happening here is it actually is working very well to retain the water right where it falls and not diverting it into a pond, which is better for stormwater retention, I guess, in my opinion.
I don't see why that's a problem. We're trying to retain stormwater. I think that's a great idea. I moved here 40 years ago because of the name of the city. We're Eau Claire, clear water. We want to keep the sand and the oil and everything out of the storm sewers, and I can't see where this is any kind of problem for that at all. I've monitored it very closely over the last year because I did have some concerns about erosion or drag out. There's no evidence of that whatsoever. Okay. As far as the ice and snow thing, plowing last winter, again, I was a little concerned about that, kind of new thing. My plow guy said it wasn't really a problem. We didn't have a bunch of stuff ended up at the end of the driveway that got plowed up. It stayed down pretty well. I had a couple of little spots that I had to shovel around and repack, and it was really easy and not a problem. But when we got all of this rain back in January, an inch of rain or whatever, and then it froze and every parking lot in town had an inch of ice on it, I was the first guy in town that had a dry parking lot. It was awesome. It melted very quickly. You know, I wish I had pictures to show you that now. I wasn't anticipating having to do this. But it does work well in the winter. Easier to maintain. You put down blacktop over the years, it gets a little wavy and you get puddles and it moves. With this, you know, I can get a grader in there and smooth it out and recompact it, and it ends up, you know, I'm good for another 3 to 5 years. So as far as the cost, it really wasn't a whole lot different from putting in blacktop, but one big advantage for me in doing this kind of driveway over blacktop is I don't have to put a ditch down the middle of the driveway. That makes it a lot harder for people to move their trailers in and out of the storage. I've got cars in there that I can push around on this stuff. If I had a ditch in the middle of the driveway, I'd have to have somebody there to help me, or you know, it's not something I'd be able to do myself. I talked with all the tenants, see if they had any reservations about what we've got there. No problem. Talked to my next door neighbor that has all the storage units right next to me. He thought it was a great idea. Had no problem with me being approved for a waiver. You know, if anybody should be angry, it's because he had to do this and I didn't. But anyway, what we're looking at, I've spent $8,500 roughly to put in this system. The roughly 20 by 200 driveway. In order to replace what I've already got there that's working great would be about $10,000. So that's what you'd be asking me to do, and spend $10,000 on putting in a driveway that isn't going to work, in my opinion, as well as what I have already. And it's also going to mean that it's going to delay the plans for my continued development of that property. And I'm not sure I even want to develop there now if, you know, if I'm forced to do this. I guess you can say it's in black and white on the plan that was approved. I understand that. I'm sorry about my ignorance. Not a general contractor. I tried to do this on my own and made a very costly mistake apparently. But in my defense, I see properties all over the city that have gravel driveways and parking lots. I noticed that I've got 2 right on the street. You know, he talked about the overflow parking by the hotel there. There's dirt that goes right up to the driveway apron there. I've got a gravel pit down the road the other way. And I don't really see any problem there either. I guess I've kind of watched to see how much problem they're causing with drag out and erosion, and not really a big deal there. I was very interested though today. I was touring around looking for this material in various different parking areas and so forth, and I noticed that the new Jeffers Park, the baseball diamonds out there around the pavilion, it's not really a parking lot, I guess, but it's kind of a driveway, a pedestrian way or whatever. All around the pavilion they have this blue granite, right? And so the city's starting to use this stuff. It really works nicely. Much better solution than the traditional crushed limestone or whatever has been used for that type of purpose in the past. I wouldn't want it on my property, and that's why I went with what I went with here. So I guess any questions for me?
Are there any questions for the applicant? Joe, go ahead.
Thank you. Mark, was it always your intent to use this product, or did you change along the way?
No, it was my oversight from the start. Had I noticed this when the plan was presented, I think I put that in my memo, that it was my original intention to do this all along. I'd seen it used successfully in a number of places. At our building, I guess the first time I saw it was the people who bought my building at Envirotech. We had a little problem with the erosion on the sides of the building, where we were driving some trucks back there to our sandblasting guy had a mobile thing, and he'd pull a big truck and trailer around there. So they put this blue granite on a pretty good rise around both ends of the building and rolled it down, and it prevented the erosion, and it was so nice and flat, and it didn't move when the trucks went through there. They're running heavy trucks on this stuff, and it doesn't really compact like other types of gravel. It's different. It's square and it lays flat, and that's where I saw it originally. So I started questioning around about it, and I found some landscaper that had used it on a driveway that I went and looked at. Of course, now I realize that it was in a surrounding township and not in the city of Eau Claire. Foolish me, not realizing that that was something that wasn't allowed. So, but yeah, had I known that this was in my site plan to begin with, it would have had to have been addressed then, and may have prevented me from doing the project in the first place.
Can I ask Daryl?
Yeah, go ahead.
Daryl, could I ask you a question? Would you say that this material could be approved in future projects, or what's your stance on that?
This is not a pavement or concrete and would have to be approved by waiver based on the provisions in the report by a plan commission as each project comes through.
In the Air Force, in southern New Hampshire, we put on a porous overlay on the runway to prevent hydroplaning. It was open graded asphalt, where the water is supposed to drain through and onto the asphalt beneath. I looked at applications here in Wisconsin, but because of our more extreme climate from December 1st, and especially with this being on the north side of the building, you're probably going to go through the end of February. This is going to function just like gravel. There'll be no penetration through the blue granite down to your V shape for drainage. So this is going to be no different than base course.
Well, I do have all my retention and everything, just as though it was, graded and hard paving, but a lot less of the water is ending up in my retention ponds because it's going straight into the ground. And like I said, I wish I could have showed evidence from this winter, because my parking lot was dry long before everybody else's was, with a lot less maintenance. So I don't know how to answer that, except for, if you look at this picture, like I said, it's obvious that the water is draining very well there. That was right after we got significant amount of rainfall right there.
But the minimal digging I did through the surface, there's fines, if not some clays and silts right below that.
Yeah,
that
there's sand under there.
Penetration.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? I have one. I'm sorry, I thought I was on. How is the storage unit used? Are there tenants in each one of the units that come and go and leave their personal belongings there, or are you using it to store materials for your business, or?
Both. About half of the units now are my personal storage. That van in the picture, that's mine. I needed a place to put 20 years of stuff as a staging area before I built this next building. That was a big reason that I built this. So, but as far as use, I'm over there almost every day, and there's very little traffic. It's not even daily use for the tenants that I have there now.
Okay, Commissioner Mitchell.
Did I understand you to say that this cost about what asphalt would have cost?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't a lot cheaper, if at all. It's expensive material, but I thought it worked better for what I have. I wanted this just easier to maintain. I've had blacktop parking lots, and I think they're a pain in the butt. I don't like them. And, I guess I'd do concrete, but it's too expensive.
Are there any other questions? I have one more then, if no one else does. You talked about another building that was going to be built. Is it going to be built very close to this building, or what is your future plan? Somewhere buried under there, I think, was an aerial over on the far.
This is it right here, but I don't see the house on there. Okay, well, this is the property. There's, the storage units are right here,
Okay,
and that's a house right there.
okay,
It's a non-compliant property, of course, in an industrial park. Can't be maintained. It's well maintained. I've got some renters in there that just love the place. My intention is to put a 40 by 80, hopefully in this
Okay.
area right here.
so the two parking lots would not be adjacent to each other or adjoining?
No, not at all. I'd actually use this existing driveway and put a spur off of that and into a parking area here, which
Okay.
in all likelihood will be concrete or asphalt because it's, just a different kind of a property. It's not a warehouse. It's going to be more regularly used.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant? Okay, I think we're done.
All right, well, thank you for your time.
Okay, we'll open it to a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to make comment? Is there anyone who would like to make comment? Is there anyone who'd like to make comment? All right, I do not see any commentary, so we'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion in favor of the waiver, but I'm going to vote no on it.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Commissioner Mitchell,
I'm going to vote no as well.
Commissioner Klinkhammer,
Mr. Nick isn't here, but at the council, we have to phrase things in positive. Should the motion be to affirm the site plan with a specific date for compliance?
The motion is in the positive to approve a waiver, so that's proper.
That's right.
Yep, that is proper.
okay, any other commentary? I have something I'd like to say. While there is a lot of sense to perhaps what he's done, I think about all the other mini storage things that we have done, and I really think we owe a duty of fairness to all the people who have come before that have done storage units where we have required them to pave it. We've even required them to go back and change it so that it's big enough for a turnaround. So I don't really feel that we can, in good faith to all the people in the future and the past, approve this. Any other commentary? I would call the question then. All those in favor? Any opposed? I'm sorry, the motion fails. All right, the next item on the agenda is a site plan for approval for a two-tenant building at 4675 Royal Drive.
This is the property. It's at the south end of Royal Drive, where it intersects with Cross Street off of Highway 93. And this is the site plan then showing a two-tenant building, parking on two sides. Its access coming off the end of Royal Drive, again, Highway 93. And it's the front building elevation. This is one section of the building, the other section of the building. And that's the side of the building facing Highway 93. It's a 6,500 square foot building with courtyard. It has a parking requirement of 26 stalls. They show 30 stalls on site. They do extend the sidewalk into the site. We are recommending they stripe across and connect to their sidewalk in front of the building. They may want to move their handicap to align with that. That's one of the things we've seen other folks do. They show a 4-stall bike rack that it is noted to be meets city standards. They do note their exterior lighting will meet city standards. They do have a trash enclosure that meets city standards. Their landscaping is shown with front foundation plantings on 2 sides, street trees clustered over off of Cross Street. We are recommending street trees along Highway 93. There's overhead power lines that may limit that to ornamentals, or there may be an easement there that says you can't plant underneath those power lines, in which case we'd recommend they put a row of shrubs up against the side of these parking stalls. The wall signs shown on the building, they have wall signs for each of the tenants on the front of the building, and then they show this double wall sign on the east side of the building facing Highway 93. That double wall sign has a tenant listing then that isn't in that part of the building. That can be approved by Plan Commission as part of a master sign plan, which we are recommending you do at this time. The size of those signs are limited by code, and we'll review those with permits. They also may place a pole sign on this property, which we would also review with permits. Site grading, drainage, and other city services are also reviewed in our report. We provided a draft letter that recommends conditions of approval. Provide 4 copies of revised site plan showing that striping connecting that sidewalk with the sidewalk in front of the building. Providing a street trees or a low row of shrubs along the east side of the site. With this approval, the Plan Commission is approving that master sign plan. City engineer approval of drainage. And then signs must be C3P district standards, and we'll review those with permits. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Daryl? Commissioner Klinkhammer was first.
Say again what your recommendation would be regarding that sign on the end of the building?
We're okay with that idea of the double sign on the side of the building for a multi-tenant building. It makes sense to us that this is the building in which these 2 businesses are located.
Commissioner Peterson.
If we approve this site plan as is,
Mm-hmm.
and our preference is to have the sidewalk line up with the striped parking, or the striped parking lot between the 2 handicap stalls.
Mm-hmm.
If we approve the site plan as is, could they put an east-west portion of that sidewalk to come over there and then straight south to the handicap parking?
That would be another option, to stripe this way and then come across.
Yeah.
Another option would be to simply lose a parking stall and just stripe it straight across.
So I'm thinking they have the handicap parking in the center, so it can be
Yeah,
used by both.
we're guessing the state reviews handicap parking as part of the building permits, and they may say, oh, you gotta leave that there. But it's something to look at if the state allows them to adjust it, so.
But even if we approve the site plan as is,
Mhm.
there would be some flexibility.
There's,
internally.
yeah, in my mind, there's at
Okay.
least 3 ways of doing it, yep.
As long as, okay.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any, but I have a question.
Yes.
On that site plan, it does not show a location for a big sign overhead, does it?
No.
Okay. Is there a preference where we would want that to be?
As long as it's not within a setback area, we would administratively take care of that as part
Okay.
of a sign permit. We'd expect it to be out on Highway 93, either here or here.
Okay.
Would be the likely locations if they chose to do one.
Okay, great.
Not that they couldn't do one over here, but we'd expect it along 93.
Okay. Commissioner Peterson?
Would that be in lieu of some of the signing on the building itself then?
No, they are allowed, again, the number of wall signs they are showing is consistent with sign code. We will review their size as part of the permit, and then they are allowed a pole sign, and that's limited in terms of size and height also.
In addition to the?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? I think we're done.
Okay.
Would the applicant like to come forward?
Good evening. My name is Bill Betcher. I'm with Lean and Peterson Architects, also going to be the owner of the building. I can address the sign thing right away. With the site here, if any of you guys had went out there, it's Oak Park Dental and it keeps dropping down. We have to bring in about 3,000 yards of fill to build the site up. So our plan is to have the signage on the end of the building if, when the cars are coming over 93, they can actually see the building. If they can't see the building, then we'll do a ground-mounted pole sign, which will probably be right in this corner outside of the Excel easement.
Okay.
So, and then we've got, the signs on the two businesses. With the Excel easement on there, it's a 50-foot easement. I believe they will not allow trees. We had to have this nice little jog in the gravel waterway there because we can't touch anything on the ground within 15 feet of their power pole. So we had to dodge around that. So if we do plantings, we can't go anywhere near that power pole. They're adamant about that. We had to actually shift the building about 7 feet 2 weeks ago when we got their feedback. So the two spaces, the one space is going to be for Lean and Peterson Architects to move into. The other space is going to be for my wife's retail business. We aligned everything so she gets deliveries of product, sometimes less than truckload. So trucks can pull up across on Cross Street, up on the Royal Drive, back straight in, not doing turning maneuvers on the asphalt, so it'll prolong the life of the driveway. As far as moving the handicapped access, I think I would probably just stripe across and lose a spot of parking versus making, my business less accessible. It's best to have it centered, so it's no big deal to just stripe it straight across and lose a spot. We've got a few extra parking spots beyond what code requires, and part of the parking is size for the future 1,500 square feet that we can add on to the east end of the building. So, does anybody have any questions on what we're looking at doing?
Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't see any. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to make any commentary? Is there anyone who'd like to make commentary? Third try's the last one. All right, we'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I move for approval with staff recommendations.
And do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? We'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda is for approval, site plan, Market and Johnson addition and alteration. To approve a site plan for Market and Johnson addition at 2350 Galloway Street.
This is Market and Johnson's existing facility off of Galloway Street, just west of Hastings Way. I would note the existing trees along the trail here, since we'll be talking about those. This is the site plan for the project. It's placing additions up in this area onto the building, a small addition on the corner here, and then an addition down on the south end. And then these are revised building elevations. This is probably showing, this would be the north side of the building, the north portion of the building. This is Galloway as you come under 53. Again, you can see that two-story type structure on the back is the primary change in this structure, in this site plan. There is a letter from applicant explaining the parking for this request. This is a revised site plan, although it's very similar to the approved site plan previously seen by Waterways and Parks Commission and Plan Commission. The main change is that it's added a lower level in this area, and that's then increased the parking requirement. The office area with that lower level has increased by 4,700 square feet, and that then requires an additional 16 parking stalls for the property, and they've provided that by simply striping and sidewalking this area as parking. Before it just was an asphalt area for loading docks, and it'll now become part of their parking lot. The remaining aspects of the site are very similar to the approved site plan. We did attach the original letter of approval for the project, and the conditions within that letter have been addressed as follows. They do show a 6-stall bike rack next to their addition. It does need to be designed as per city code. They have modified this south building addition where they now leave a vision triangle off. There's no building in that location. They did not indicate a pathway connection to our trail. This might be the best location to do that in terms of grade. There are 2 or 3 pine trees that were not added to the site. Those I indicate here. They did put some shrub plantings over in here. And with this addition now, they are actually then showing that there may be some tree loss in this area. And we are adding then a condition saying if we lose trees, we need to replace them subject to city forester approval. They do note their exterior lighting will meet city standards. Site grading, drainage, and other city services are reviewed in our report. We provided a draft letter with recommended conditions. Provide 6 copies of a revised site plan indicating those bike stalls will be as per city standards. Show a pathway connection from the sidewalk to the city trail. Add these 3 pine trees and indicate they'll replace any other trees lost along the path, the trail with city forester approval. And with that, I would answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Klinkhammer.
It seems to me that that trail is quite a bit above the level of that, where you're proposing that access to the trail B. Isn't that fairly steep there?
I think we got a grading plan. This is showing the existing grade. I know as you get down in the south portion of the lot, there's quite a grade change. In fact, they show with their grading plan for it, they're actually showing retaining walls in this location. So yes, down here, I think it would be difficult. But as I look at the grading plan, there doesn't appear to be that significant of a grade change from this sidewalk over to the trail. And maybe applicant can comment more on that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any. Would the applicant like to come forward?
Yeah, I'm Jerry Shea, and I'm with Market and Johnson. I can answer any questions you have on the amended site plan. I can address it if you would like. It is fairly flat at this area here. Most of the people from our office, as they use the bike trail now, use that area to walk on it. It's much flatter there, but as we go here, where our patio is going to be, there's about a 10-foot grade difference. So we're going to have retaining walls there. I have met with the city forester. I walked through things with him this last week. And one of the things he had commented on is that a few of the pine trees that we planted along here when we did the addition back in '96, a few of those are in bad shape right now. We've got some rust going on. We're going to take those out. He had thought that through this area here, because of the proximity of the building to the bike trail, so something along the line of a dwarf tree would probably work out much better there than a pine tree. But then down along here, as Daryl said, kind of in the same area where there's some city property as well, we're going to have a light pole taken out where the transformer is located. Right now there's a lot of black locust, buckthorn, and other weed trees, as he called them, weed trees, and one decent oak. We're going to keep the decent oak, get that trimmed up. Actually, he thinks that the city foresters crews will take down all the bad trees, and that would be a really good location for us to add some firs down along there, keep the oak in really good shape, and work out very well through there. So we're going to continue to work with Matt and his crew to make sure that that all works out. Our construction, because it is two-story at that point, will become very close to the bike trail. We'll make sure it's properly fenced off so it's safe during the construction of the foundation. And we'll make sure that that area gets restored. We've been maintaining that area for a long time to make sure it looks decent. We even have irrigation out there as well, so it stays green. So, is there any other questions that we can answer?
Are there any questions for the applicant? I don't see any.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. This is a public hearing, so we'll open it now for public comment. Is there anyone who'd like to make a comment? Is there anyone who'd like to make a comment? A third try, anyone who'd like to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion.
I'll move approval. Oh, sorry.
So we have a motion for approval,
I'll second it.
and we have a second. Is there any discussion?
With
Commissioner
staff,
Mitchell.
with staff
With
recommendations.
staff recommendations, yes. All right, we have a motion and a second. I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item on our agenda is for approval, a site plan for Peace Church to approve a site plan for a parking lot addition.
This is the church. It's located off of East Fillmore Avenue and Nimitz. Of Hamilton. And you can see it has parking lots on two sides of its facility at this time. This is the site plan for the project. It's adding a row of parking along its westerly parking lot, and it's adding a bay of parking off of the driveway immediately south of the church. There is a letter from applicant explaining the request. This is 17 stalls added on the west side. This is adding 43 stalls south of their driveway. They are losing 4 stalls as part of the driveway access to these parking areas. Their total parking for the church will now be at 335 stalls. The seating capacity of the church is 850. The city parking requirement for a church is 1 stall per 6 seats, which is only 142 stalls. And thus, their parking exceeds the maximum parking requirement of more than 25% of city code. The Plan Commission can approve these additional parking beyond that maximum parking requirement based on a parking analysis that shows the need for the extra parking. The attached letter from applicant serves as that analysis. And we would agree with applicant's statement that this church does have on-street parking occurring as noted in their letter based on our observations. And we also do believe the city parking requirement of 1 stall per 6 seats is dated. Just to be frank, just so understand how we feel about that. So we would, in terms of looking at the site plan, recommend they are losing some pine tree plantings on the west side of this parking lot. We'd actually recommend they replace that up along Folsom, dependent on where this driveway is, and that their new lighting meets city standards. Grading, drainage, and traffic is reviewed in the staff report. I would note under traffic, they are recommending the alignment of a new curb cut coming off of Fillmore. Either it comes in at this location and then turns sharply to align with that drive aisle, or they can move the entrance over and come directly into this drive aisle. But this is not recommended where it comes in at a corner of a parking lot. They also need a sidewalk section through the asphalt. And they are suggesting, not recommending, but suggesting that this parallel parking along their main drive be eliminated, or at least be allowed to wear out over time. It's not proper to be parking along a 20-foot wide access drive to a church. It's blocking emergency vehicles. There's a draft letter with recommended conditions. Provide 2 copies of revised site plan that provides then shade trees in this location. Indicate their new exterior lighting will meet city standards. We need engineering approval of drainage, and then align that new driveway in either one of those angles that I indicated, and construct the concrete sidewalk through the driveway section. Do stripe the parking lot as shown on the site plan, and with that, I'd answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Darrell? Commissioner Granlund?
Would the elimination of the parallel parking bring it into compliance or only close to compliance?
It still won't be close to compliance. They'll still be way over parked, but they would lose quite a few parking stalls if they do that.
In looking at that entrance, I think they're trying to take advantage of the curb cut, that there's a lack of curb there.
Yes, there's
where
a
their
curb because
driveway-
there was a former right-of-way coming through here, is essentially why there is a curb. And they can do that. I mean, they could take advantage of that, but they should come straight in and then make an angle and align it into the drive aisle.
So I would prefer they can do either one of those, but coming straight in would make a lot more sense, and it'd just be a matter of replacing some curb with, the drop curb for a
Yep.
driveway.
Yep.
Any other questions for Darrell? Commissioner Mitchell?
The staff report references the East Fillmore Avenue Capital Improvement Program. What's that?
We have a 5-year program for our citywide streets, and I believe it was scheduled for 2018, but now it might have slipped to 2019 for when that section of Fillmore Street's going to be reconstructed.
So there's a capital improvement program for each street?
I think that was misworded, that it's our capital improvement program for our citywide
I
street
see.
improvement.
I see, okay, I thought, okay.
Thank you again. Save me rereading that. The conditions that you mentioned are addressed in the letter afford them the choice of how to orient that driveway?
Yes, either option.
Any other questions for Darrell? I don't see any. Thank you. Is the applicant here? Would he like to come forward?
Hello, my name is Matt Apple. I'm with Advanced Engineering Concepts. I can represent the applicant on some of this. As far as the driveway entrance onto Fillmore goes, yes, we would, given the 2 options, come off and go straight northwest from Fillmore and continue the north-south drive aisle there, and then just come in and put a curb cut in. We were trying to just take advantage of the existing curb cut until Fillmore is improved, but not an issue to come back and do it or add it right now. There are 22 stalls, I believe, along the one-way entrance from Hamilton that heads to the north and then east. So losing those is, it's a loss, but if it's a safety issue, I don't think it would be an issue. I don't think it would be a deal breaker or anything like that, so.
I'm thinking a lot of people might find it a lot more convenient to use the new parking lot that's a little bit closer.
Yes, yes. I'm not sure that those parking stalls get used quite a bit. I think they get used at busier times of the year, whether it's, you know, a half a dozen different times during the year that those are full, but I am an attender, but I don't see those all full very often, so I don't know that it's an issue.
Very good. Are there any questions for the applicant, Commissioner Peterson?
At this time, I don't think removal of those stalls is one of the conditions in the staff recommendation, though.
Correct. It's just a suggestion.
Okay. And we can make it part of our conditions if we feel.
If you feel, yes, you could.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to make commentary? And I have to ask the same person 3 times. Is there anyone who'd like to make commentary? I wore you down.
Okay. Regarding the 22, my name is Doug Ottom. I'm with Peace Church. Regarding those 22 stalls on that drive, while they're not full all the time, Peace is a growing church. And if we were to be required to remove those, we're going to bump into parking problems sooner than later. Our goal is to remove parking from the street and provide accessible parking for the people that attend church on Sunday mornings, Wednesday evening, and other times of the week. So I would take a little bit different stance than Matt on that. I think that they probably are a little bit more important to be able to make that choice by ourselves versus being required to not have them there.
Are there any questions? I don't see any. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll close the public hearing if there's no one else who'd like to make a comment. I'd be looking for a motion.
I move for approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, Commissioner Klinkhammer.
I deferred from making any suggestion regarding the removal of those, because even if we remove the lines, they've been parking there, they're going to continue to parking there, whether the lines are there or not, so.
Commissioner Peterson.
I agree with that assessment too, and plus the fact that if as Darrell indicated, it would be for emergency fire service, they're going to be coming in from the other direction anyway, because the fire station is north of here,
Okay.
not off of Hamilton.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on our agenda is for discussion and direction, sign code amendment update. I do too.
We're now on page 198 of our agenda for tonight. We made a initial presentation to the Plan Commission back in December of last year regarding the need to update the sign code. As we mentioned back at that time, the implementation section of our comprehensive plan indicates that the city would update or consider an update of the sign code next year in 2018. The purpose of the update is twofold. One is to address a Supreme Court ruling back in 2015 regarding an Arizona court case that involved the display of temporary signs. And then the second part of the update would be to address other sign-related provisions that we feel maybe need to be updated since our overall sign ordinance was adopted back around 1990, 1992 or so. Upon discussions between the city attorney's office and the city manager last year regarding the Arizona court case, the city manager has asked staff to draft appropriate amendments to the ordinance to be looked at this year. The regarding the court case. So at the December meeting of the Plan Commission, the Commission noted that they would be the review body that would look at the amendments. We would do it as part of our regular meetings, and then noted that the other updates that we had talked about in the comprehensive plan would likely occur in 2018 or next year. The updates that we probably would be looking at next year would relate to such topics as illumination or brightness standards, being now that there's more LED lighting being used in signage. Our ordinance is somewhat out of date in terms of looking at those types of things. Some possible changes to standards for electronic message centers, possibly. Then we would have a discussion with the Plan Commission about other topics that we felt needed to be addressed at that time. So back to the court case. The court case primarily relates to temporary signs, but based on the decision of the court, it also impacts other sections of our code regarding wall signs and ground signs, and even signs that traditionally have been exempt from sign permits, but that we have provisions for. Our discussion with the Plan Commission back in December, since that time, staff has met a number of times with the City Attorney's Office. Doug Hofer from the office has been our liaison in terms of drafting the changes, and the draft that we have been working on up to date is included in your packet tonight. The major issue that came out of the court case is that signs are regulated, cannot be regulated based on the message or in terms of what they say. And the attorneys use content neutrality as kind of the legal buzzword in terms of what they refer to. So what this means in terms of our ordinance is signs such as those that are on our awnings, projecting signs, signs on our fuel canopies over our convenience stores, and some residential related signs which traditionally have been based on what they say is somewhat problematic in our ordinance. The reason being is that our ordinance for those types of signs refer to them as identification signs, which essentially is saying that those signs are allowed as, only if they identify the name of the business or maybe the product that's sold there, but that's it. And what this court case is saying is you can't limit it that restrictively, that if you allow a sign, you can't regulate the narrative on that sign, is what it's saying. Doug has studied the ruling. He's consulted with some of the other legal organizations in the state. In fact, he's actually given a couple presentations to the State Attorney Bar Association on this. Daryl and I have attended a couple different workshops from the American Planning Association where they've had a couple meetings and workshops on that also. Based on our review, the city attorney's interpretation of the court case is that municipalities still can regulate signage in a lot of traditional areas, and those being, as shown here, in terms of, first off, off-premise signs and on-premise signs can still be differentiated and regulated. So that is still, when you think of that in context, that is looking at content-based signs, but based on the interpretations of the ruling, it's still the feeling that we can differentiate between those two and regulate those two separately, as we have done in the past. Ordinance can provide different standards between residential districts and commercial districts, and then even within the commercial districts, we can regulate differently. For example, between a neighborhood shopping and a general shopping, you can provide different standards. Yep.
Can you differentiate between like a historic district versus a regular district?
Yes. Yep. And actually, that's what I was gonna, that would be the next thing here is that we can differentiate with sign districts relating to a specific area. An example of that would be right now, we do have 4 different sign districts. The major ones would be the downtown area and Water Street. So based on those unique areas, you can provide different standards for those different areas, and we can continue to do that. And then also we can regulate based on dimensional types of things, such as the size, height, types of illumination, the number of signs, location, setback, design, and those types of things. Then finally, though, based on the ruling and the interpretations of the ruling, standards can be established for signs that provide warning that have a governmental purpose or have a public safety or informative purpose of directing people or guiding people, and that's kind of key or critical. And so based on this category of sign, there would, again, still be some content of that type of sign in terms of what the language says, just based on the nature of that sign, because you're directing people within the premise. So based on the direction from the city attorney's office, staff has reviewed the current sign code, and we've attempted to remove as much of the content-based language in there to the point where our city attorney still feels that the ordinance would withstand a potential challenge. And I guess you never know until you get to the point of a lawsuit whether it will or not, but our city attorney's office is comfortable with what we have at this point in time. In considering the changes that we have in the draft, we've generally tried to work to retain the current standards as much as possible in the ordinance. We did add one new provision related to the downtown sign district, and I'll explain that in just a minute. In addition, we tried to retain the general formatting and section numbering of the sign code with these changes, and with one exception. That relates to the temporary signs that are in section 1616.110.0, and then the signs that are exempt from permits, which are the next section in 120. And what we did there is in these two sections is we categorized the signs into two categories or two classifications. One would be the signs that have the public safety or government function component, and then the other would be the more general type of signs in those categories. The reason we did this, as I mentioned before, is that based on the court opinions of the case, there appears to be more latitude for municipalities for signs that have a public safety government function category. And again, because based on the nature of those signs, there is some content-based that would occur with that type of a sign. As I mentioned earlier, there is one new section that we added to the code. This is on page 17 of the ordinance, or in your packet, it would be page 218. And this relates to signage in our downtown district. The proposed change does not relate to the court case at all, but it's in response to a meeting that Daryl and I had with the board of directors for the new Confluence Arts Center that would be down on Graham Avenue. And what this change would be to allow for the ability of the Arts Center to request signs that would exceed the 100 square foot limitation that currently exists in the downtown area by requesting a conditional use permit. That conditional use permit would be reviewed by the Plan Commission, and that section includes criteria for the Plan Commission to consider that. Being that it would be in the downtown district, technically it wouldn't, it could apply to more than just the Confluence Arts Center. It could apply to other businesses downtown if they chose to want to come forward and request a conditional use permit. So that's the one kind of change outside of this. With that, we didn't really plan to go through the changes page by page in the ordinance, but try to answer questions that you may have, and then discuss whether the commission may want to schedule public hearings for this at a future date.
Are there questions for Ken?
I do. Well, I read through this, but I have to say I didn't study it. But I will before the public hearing. But just one little thing that jumped out at me was the notion of permanent, non-temporary signs. Is there a special meaning to that? Isn't that redundant?
Probably is. Yeah.
Is that something from the
No,
court case or something?
no, that was something, I guess, that we just felt, just to emphasize that the signs don't fall in the temporary category, that they're a permanent sign. I guess we can remove that redundancy. We're still tweaking the wording on this a little bit, so those are the kinds of comments we'd like to get from the commission.
And then may I ask one more? I have to find it here. In the, I'm not sure where, I can't, it's motor fuel price signs, and it's on page 29 or 230. It's a big red, it's crossed out. And so that's all, that whole section is crossed out. And so does that mean that those kinds of signs are taken care of in other places? That they're just a general, as long as they meet setbacks and all that?
Yeah, the reason we took that out is that that category of signs we've never used in since the sign ordinance was adopted back in the early 90s. The intention there at one time was that under a motor fuel canopy, if a store wanted to individually place a sign on one of the supports of the canopy, that they could post their motor fuel prices. What we're seeing, it's done across the board, is that either the motor fuel price is put on the pole or monument sign, or that it's mounted flat on the canopy of the gas canopy. If a convenience store did want to add a separate sign under the canopy on a pole, that actually would be covered under, we feel would be covered under a different section, under well, it would actually be, there's a section for directional and instructional signs, and then which is on page 27. So if someone wanted to have that kind of sign, we would just administer it under that section. So we feel that's kind of redundant.
Thank you. Pat, I did study this quite a bit, and I didn't, and maybe this only applies to commercial buildings. Is there anything in here that is in regard to residential buildings? I guess what I'm getting at, if you want me to cut to the chase, is so a for rent sign permanently affixed to a residential house.
Yeah,
What is that in here?
Yes.
Okay, where is that?
Actually, we have received some comments or complaints from some of the neighborhood associations that some of the for rent signs, which are supposed to be a temporary type of sign, have become permanent because they basically have been bolted or nailed or screwed to the to a building, and essentially have become permanent. So what we did to address that is we went into the definition section, and on page 6, definition of temporary sign, and then we said a sign physically attached to a building through the devices such as bolts, nails, screws is not considered temporary. So in that case, if we see that, we would ask the landlord they can still have the sign, but they need to have it displayed in a non-temporary fashion in terms of out in front in the yard, or somehow less permanently attached to the building in some way. So we're trying to get at that concern of the neighborhood.
When you said page 6, is that also page 207? Is that?
Yeah, I don't have that number in the
Oh,
system.
okay. Okay, very good. I'll restudy it. Thank you.
I thought I read in here somewhere that a for rent sign had to be down within 10 days of renting the property, or did I dream that?
That probably is in here. Yeah,
Oh, you're right, you're
yeah,
right, I bet
yeah,
it was
yeah,
campaign signs.
You're
Yeah.
right, that's
Thank
the
you.
campaign signs. I think for rent signs, it says that upon rental of a property, and that has been a kind of a continual enforcement issue for us to determine when that has or hasn't happened, but we do our best on that.
Any other comments for that?
Mr. Ivory, as the complexity of this ordinance continues to evolve, you realize, of course, that your retirement is never an option.
That's correct. I've been told that.
Thank you. I think we can, I think it's ready for public hearing. I say go for it.
May I ask one question?
Yes.
Why did we cross out time and temperature signs?
Again, that is a content-based sign. By regulating, saying that you can have a sign that is time and temperature, you're basically describing what the content of that sign is.
Okay.
But we're not prohibiting that type of a sign. Any business can, as part of a wall sign or part of their pole sign, they can incorporate a time and temperature sign, just that we can't regulate that separately.
Okay, so I have one additional question. Remember when we talked about the holiday signs with the changing screens? We talked about it a couple of times over the last couple of years, that we would allow them to change every 30 seconds or every minute. And a time and temperature sign generally changes fairly quickly. Does that affect that at all? Because usually it's a scroll.
No, they're all handled or addressed as a message center, so they come under the provisions of the message center, which right now is that they can change every 2 seconds. So.
Okay.
So that doesn't affect them.
Okay, thank you. I just had to ask.
Okay. You probably have one at work, don't you?
Yeah, we do.
Yep.
All right, so what do you need us to do with this? Do you need us to make a motion of some sort?
I think just the consensus to move forward. We'll probably look at doing this probably after Labor Day is my guess. Sometime in the early fall is when we anticipate bringing it back. Well, we could look at that too. So I think we have our marching orders here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Yes. The next item for discussion and direction is the Randall Park Neighborhood Plan, the 700 block of Hudson Street downsizing.
We attached a letter from Helene of the Randall Park neighborhood requesting Plan Commission initiate a downzoning of the property on the south side of Lake Shore. And these are the properties. And you'll notice this whole stretch east of 7th has R2 zoning. South of it is R2 zoning, and here's other RM. So this RM zoning here does kind of stick out on its own, and that's the request that they're asking in terms of initiating a downzoning of that property. It is based on policy from the neighborhood plan, which is also attached. This property has 5 duplexes and 2 single-family homes, And the request would be to downzone it from an RM to an R2, so it matches the other orange areas shown on the map. We would note the lot size of these duplexes is only 8,316 square feet. A duplex needs 10,000 square feet with R2 zoning. The zoning code does allow the Plan Commission to grant a conditional use permit for the conversion of a single-family home to a duplex on smaller lots, down to 8,000. If the Plan Commission desires to initiate this downzoning, we would recommend it be from an RM to an R2P, and considering granting conditional use permits for those 5 duplexes, saying they've been converted from a single-family home to a duplex. That then avoids creating non-conforming uses for those 5 duplexes. And this is something the Plan Commission did on the East Side Hill neighborhood substantially with the downzoning of that area. If the Plan Commission would like to initiate this downzoning, we would set up public hearings probably later this summer, and it then would involve the notification of these property owners and all property owners within 300 feet of the site. Is there any questions?
Are there any questions for Daryl? I have one.
Yes.
So let's say one of the duplexes burns down and it is destroyed completely by fire. With the existing zoning at R2P and they're grandfathered in, could it be rebuilt upon?
A new one could not, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So if something was destroyed by fire, it could only be replaced by a single-family home, or they'd have to purchase another property in order to build something else?
Yes.
Okay. I hate to be dumb, but what's the difference between R2 and R2P?
A plan development
Okay.
zoning means it's tied to something else, such as special lot sizes.
Okay.
And that's, I mean, you could set this up where instead of granting the conditional use permits for what's there, you could literally grant by the plan development special lot sizes that says you can rebuild a new duplexes on these properties with the smaller lot sizes. We haven't recommended that. Instead, we'd recommend giving them conditional use permits so they are allowed with a conditional use permit. And that allows them to do additions, interior modifications to the existing structure, not have to come before plan commissions. They just get their permits and have at it.
Okay. I know most of the houses on that block are very old.
Yep.
Commissioner Mitchell.
So with R2P, the conditional use is automatic, whereas with R2, they'd have to come before the Plan Commission for the conditional use?
Yes, each time they want to do an addition or they want to do a remodel, they're going to be coming to plan commission for those permits. Might as well just give it to them up front.
Any other questions for Daryl? I don't see any.
So we're going to initiate public hearings probably later this summer, or we might wait till September and come back with Pat on with the sign code. We won't be waiting till April.
Could I just ask, Jim, do you think that the neighborhood would have any problem with R2P?
I think if they do, they'll let you know. No, I think it makes sense the way Daryl described it. I think it would be easier on the people that live there to make changes without going through a lot of hassle. But we'll find out shortly.
Well, but you need to know, if you're going to initiate hearings, you need to know if we want you to go R2P or R2, right?
At this time, I'm assuming you want us to go R2P unless I
Okay.
hear differently.
All right.
Do you need a vote on that? Or do you need a
I'm
show of
looking at
hands?
all nodding right now. I haven't seen
Okay.
a shaking, so I don't
Okay.
need a vote.
All right, sounds good.
Okay?
All right, next item on the agenda, code compliance items. Anything that trash is all gone from that house, that was a problem in my neighborhood. Anything for that? Any future agenda items?
Yes.
Yes.
I do want to note that it is highly unlikely you'll be having your July 3rd meeting. We will be canceling it unless a emergency comes up. You will get a notice next week stating it's canceled if that
Okay,
is
good. That
factual.
would be good because otherwise it has to be on the airplane going to Washington State because I'm flying to Washington that day.
Okay.
All right, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes as they were posted to you? I would say we're adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and the City of Eau Claire. A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.